Hey everybody, it's Jan here, and you are listening to the Creator Empires podcast. This is the podcast where we talk to builders in the language education space to find out what's going on, what is working, what is not working anymore. And today's guest is Olly Richards. Olly is a good friend, and he has been building story learning, also runs a business brand now. And Olly started his blog back in the day. It was still a blog about 13 years ago. And lots of things have changed in the world of online business and selling courses. And in this interview, Olly is going to talk about everything that has changed over the past year or so, last 2 years, because things are changing in the language education space in the world of selling online courses. That's what we're going to talk about. I hope you enjoy the interview. See you there. All right, Olly, I've been looking forward to this chat because, we do get to chat every now and then, right? But, now we have almost an hour where we can just go really deep. And we do not always get that opportunity. So, I was looking forward to this interview, and thanks for joining us today and, giving this podcast a new boost because it has been a while since I've done interviews.
Well, what can I say? Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, this podcast is about building in the language space, and you've been doing that for, I think, over 10 years now.
13 years by my latest count. Yeah, 13. It was August 2013 that I first started my blog. So it's been over 13 years.
13 years of blogging is where it originally started, right? That's how you gained traction at the beginning. What has changed over the past 10 years in building education businesses or language businesses for that matter?
I think in a way that nothing's changed in terms of the way that you help people. that is starting to change now with AI, but it's always really been you're either in the software game, like you're the apps that everyone's heard of, or you're in the kind of influencer niche education space where you're selling memberships, courses, training, digital products, that kind of thing. And that hasn't really changed all that much, I don't think. What's always been the differentiator is traffic. So to put it simply, the people with the most traffic make the most money. And so that's what's changed over time. And certain things have been constant. So there have always been things like ads and affiliate networks. So it's always been possible to run Google ads and sell courses on ClickBank, latterly Meta ads and things like that. That's always been possible. That works with specific, more direct response style business models primarily. But if you're not playing that game, then it's been about organic content based stuff and organic based content, whatever you want to call it. Let's just call it organic content. How about that? Yeah. And that's the thing that changes over time. So SEO was the original. That's been around since forever. It still is a thing, and I frequently talk to people whose SEO is going up and up and up and up. I still don't really understand what's going on there, but it's certainly. A lot of people who did build their businesses off the back of SEO had a really nasty surprise in 2023 when Google started panicking and changed their whole search experience, started foregrounding places like Reddit and stuff like that over and giving their AI overviews and stuff. So a lot of SEO businesses were hit very, very hard with that. And then you've had podcasts. Podcasts have, they had their moment. I think, again, they're still very popular, but there was a particular moment in time between 2005 and 2015 where there weren't that many of them. So they were extremely good traffic sources. And then you've had various new social medias come up like Instagram, TikTok, for the most part, based on what I see, generally not particularly good revenue drivers for language businesses. And then, of course, YouTube has been the really big thing. And again, it's been around since 2005. But it's really only in the last 10 and certainly 5 years that YouTube has just taken over everything and is now like kind of the go-to for podcasts, for video, and so now we're getting what's called AEO, which is Answer Engine Optimization, which is like the new SEO. That is like kind of the future, although I don't know if volume is there in the same way that SEO was. That remains to be seen. So yeah, that's a kind of overview, and we've written all of those paths at Storyline. Started with SEO, I've done the podcast thing, done the YouTube thing, done the paid thing, done the affiliate thing. We're now starting to get into software slowly. Better late than never. And yeah, so that's kind of that's a potted bio of the last 20 years in language learning.
Yeah, so we've been running live events for people in the language space. We call them langpreneurs, right? For about 8 years now. We see many of these langpreneurs who started, well, let's say like before COVID, right? Like start from zero and then build an audience, relatively big audience quite quickly. Have a few 100,000 subscribers on YouTube nowadays. They did all the basics, right? So you build an audience, you give lead magnets away, collect email addresses, and then you sell them something, right? You build one course, and then you build the next level course. You build a few courses, and that's most of these guys in our community are doing. After a while, and I recently did a poll, not recently, but a few months ago, I ran a poll in our in our hotline on WhatsApp, and I asked if people are still growing on YouTube, right? Because many of them seem to have hit a ceiling last year. Like at the beginning, it's easy to get started if you have good content, but there's only so many people who want to learn, I don't know, French or Arabic. And many of them have been stuck on YouTube and not growing as fast anymore. Is that something that you have experienced yourself? And what do you recommend? What are some of the things that you have done when you hit that ceiling in traffic?
I think it depends how you define grow, to be honest, because I mean, for a long time, I think we've always known that it's not really about the views, it's about the leads. Just like with SEO, it was always to say it was never really about how many views you could get. It was about how many leads you could get from that. And I think, there's been more and more of a focus in the education space around that with YouTube. So, I mean, things like video views, likes, subscribes, they just don't matter. They only matter in the sense that, creators compare themselves with other people. I think what's changed for us is that we've really, there was a time when like our website was the main thing, and we viewed YouTube as just a way for people to get over to our website, discover the brand. But since SEO in particular has taken such a hit, we've just been thinking more and more about YouTube as being its own lead gen engine, and so we've been focusing a lot more on. We still focus on getting views. Don't get me wrong, but we've put considerably more effort into lead capture. And what I mean by that is not just having like one lead magnet that you send everyone to, but to kind of treat every view as sacrosanct and say, right, well, given the video that we're making, how do we make sure that we get as many leads as possible from this video? And so we take a lot of care over scripting to make sure that there's a very natural progression from the video to the lead magnet. We think a lot about where to place that CTA or CTAs. We think about how to script it. And when we're planning the video, we're planning the lead magnet as an integral part of the ideation process, right? So if we're making a video where we're not sure what a compelling lead magnet would be, we might not make the video, because what we find consistently is that when we have a video that teaches something and then there is an information gap of some kind which can be filled with the lead magnet in a credible way, it just creates incredible response. And some of our videos recently, we've had as much as 16% of views convert to leads, which is outrageous. Now that's not normal. That's like our best case. But even with an average case now, we're getting like 2% of views converting to leads, which is really huge, and so if even a video that gets like 20,000 views, we could be getting 400 or 500 leads from that. And that's really, really substantial, and potentially thousands of leads from a bigger view. So I think it's much more about treating, given that now so many more people are going to YouTube as their entertainment, as their source of information, as their TV, all of that. I think there's a growing realization that you have to consider the whole package when you're thinking about YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what are some of the things that have worked for you over the past few years, or last year, or the things that are working now? Optimizing for leads seems to be one of them. I saw that you also launched a new YouTube channel for a podcast,
Yeah.
and I saw it's getting lots of views.
Yeah.
Any want to share what happened there? Why did you start this? How did you
Yeah.
get with the idea, and how's it going?
So I started the story learning podcast 2015, a long time ago, and then I stopped around COVID. I think I kind of I got a bit burnt out with it, and so I stopped making the podcast myself. Of course, it was audio only back then. And then the general trend we've been seeing with the decline in SEO, with the rise of YouTube, is that like we don't want to, like, the incentives are against continuing to make very broad top of funnel content and towards more niche middle of funnel content, because the algorithm is so good now that if you make a very kind of detailed video on like language learning approaches or techniques which are not interesting for the casual viewer, like YouTube will find the people who are interested in that and put that content in front of them. So basically you can get a lot of views with very niche topics. So given that, we sort of reflected and thought, right, our main YouTube channel is very, very top of funnel, right? So for example, we just released a video on how Jodie Foster learned French, right? So we're kind of combining celebrity with language learning and all of that. This is very, very broad interest, top of funnel stuff. But then following through this theory on, okay, well, what's changing now in algorithm and distribution? We would think, okay, well, a lot of we should start to create more in-depth language learning content that's more suitable for middle of funnel. So language learning techniques, for example. Yeah, I don't know, like different ways of memorizing vocabulary, this kind of stuff that is not going to it's not going to work on our main channel because it's too niche interest. But if we create like purely middle of funnel content and have it in its own container, meaning in its own channel, would the algorithm then start to put that in front of people? Because the thing with YouTube is that it has your channel has its own audiences, right? So if you have a broad audience like we do on our main channel, and then you suddenly start creating niche content, it's not going to work as well. So it's generally better to separate those two things and say have a kind of general interest channel over here and then a more niche channel over here. At least that's been our experience. So we thought, well, what's our best source of middle of funnel niche content? Podcast. Problem was we stopped it a few years ago. So let's start it again. This time, put it on video, and also and then also do a lot better job of actually planning the content and how it works. So brought on a producer for the podcast channel and all of that. And then let's just try it. And right out of the gate, our videos were getting 10, 15,000 views on YouTube. It's also going out on Spotify, on all the other places. So a real big success right out of the gate.
So is that an example, like those videos, those podcast videos, are those an example of videos that get less views than the videos on your main channel, but more leads or more qualified leads at least?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. But some of the video, like if we put out a video that does very badly on our main channel, it might only get like 20,000 views, 15,000, 20,000 views. But some of our best podcast episodes get 50 or 20,000 views. So it's not even that it's smaller. It's actually, it can be at a similar size. And then, it's also new. We only started it a few months ago, so we're still working on the lead gen piece. To be honest with you, I don't have the details on the numbers for lead gen there. I know it's getting plenty of leads. I can't say at this stage about the quality or the relative numbers, but that's it. This is part of the process, right? We determine that the channel is viable. It is great, box ticked. Now from here we'll start to move on to optimizing it and take it from there. But also like it can serve other purposes. So it may be the case that lead gen on this new channel is actually not particularly strong, but we get lots of signups for our VIP coaching offer for example. So maybe that the buyer behavior is slightly different, but the lead behavior is less so. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, you see this a lot on business channels. Very, very niche content, very, very specific, and they will sell or push booked calls directly from the channel itself with no lead gen whatsoever. So the more specific and niche you go, the higher quality the customer, the viewer, the more likely that they will be kind of ready to buy straight away if you have the right thing. So a lot of this is work in progress, but it's certainly very interesting to watch it unfold.
All right, thanks for sharing. What I'm trying to figure out here in this interview is what I'm trying to extract from you is
Wait, tell me what do you want me to say?
how to grow a language business in 2026, right? So far we've talked about optimizing for leads, podcasts, so video formats that are mid funnel, not just top of the funnel. So yeah, we've only been talking about traffic so far. Let's talk about AI. I mean, we have to talk about it. How do you use AI in your business, or how does your team use it?
I mean, it's changing on a
Yeah.
monthly basis. I mean, it's changing on a weekly basis, but we're not that quick to adapt. So it's changing on a monthly basis. I mean, right now, we are using a lot of Claude Code for writing. So we're building a process at the moment, for example, where we can put out new courses. So what we might do is, because the thing is that's unique about story learning is that we teach, like we operate in, I guess 6 to 8 primary languages. We do stuff in many more languages. We have books in soon to be 25 languages. But the main revenue generating languages, there'll be like 6 to 8 of them. And we're actually moving towards a place now where we can put out more kind of masterclasses and standalone courses. And what's changed now is that we're able to, let's say I hire you, Jan, to teach a Dutch class, a Dutch masterclass. So I can hire you to come and record that masterclass for me. And then I can give a kind of like 5-minute voice note covering what it's about. And then with Claude Code, you can go off and write the sales page, build the sales page, write all of the emails, do all of this stuff, update the checkout forms. You can do all of this stuff in half an hour. It's absolutely nuts. And, you could have done all this stuff with Claude, and you still can. It just because the context windows are very small, it just takes a lot longer. So Claude Code is kind of just improving opening up the game there in terms of efficiency. So we've started to investigate that quite a lot, and it now means this takes the place of at least one marketing hire, if not two, two marketing hires with very different skill sets. One kind of page build. You don't need a page builder anymore. You don't need a copywriter anymore. Which is not to say there's no use for those, but in terms of actually pushing stuff out quickly when you have a warm audience of buyers, it's incredibly quick. We're doing that now, and that's just really changing how we're just thinking about even product development. On the YouTube side, we use a lot of AI for some elements of scripting, so like ideating different hooks, different calls to actions. We would use AI for what else? We for mocking up YouTube thumbnail ideas, for example. It could be taking a script from a YouTube video and then writing that into an email to be sent out to the list. We've been using AI to do liquid text personalization, so we're segmenting leads on the front end and then writing multiple variations of emails depending on the custom fields that we apply to people. It's there's probably more examples besides that don't come to mind, but we are making extensive use of it. But we've had to really invest into training on this side, right? Because it's not all obvious. And I think one of the interesting things I've noticed about myself is that, so I'm relatively quick at learning these things, I think, but what I've noticed is that I lack the imagination sometimes to know what's possible with AI, So until recently, it wasn't evident to me that I could kind of use Claude to build a web page and publish it on the website. And then it's simple things like that. I kind of knew it was possible, but I was talking to a friend last night who's got an engineering background, and it was really interesting to just notice how him with this engineering background approaches AI with the mind of a software developer, asking what is possible to do with this technology. And that's just not me. Like, I don't have that training. And so I feel like I'm simply being held back by a lack of imagination and awareness of what can be done. So for example, I'm part of some AI memberships where they teach marketing, they teach AI stuff for marketers. So like, here's a playbook, do this. Here's a playbook, do that. I've been hiring people to talk to just talk through options and ideas, and found that very, very useful. So I'm now in the process of kind of learning how to use Claude Code to publish web pages, design and then publish web pages directly to WordPress without any involvement from me, for example. But I've had to really work on my imagination, as it were, or my awareness of what's actually possible to get done.
Yeah. So nowadays we can build pages with AI. We can write copy with AI. Can come up with video ideas for thumbnails, scripting, and a few other things that you just mentioned. How has that affected the business? Does that mean that the people who work for Story Learning don't have anything to do anymore? Like, what happened to your copywriter or your page builder? Did your costs go down, or did productivity just go up?
I think productivity went up. I mean, so our team is a lot smaller than it was a few years ago. We've downsized the team quite substantially. Now, I think that was partly because we were over leveraged on team anyway. But then I think what's happened is that rather than replacing those people, we have just been able to do a lot more with the existing team. And I've been trying to kind of move towards a place recently where I feel like the way forward for our type of business is very much having a small team of very highly capable individuals with ownership of different elements of the business. Right. So
they use AI.
Using AI, yeah. So whereas in the past, you'd have a situation where you kind of have a much more kind of hierarchical org chart where you'd have, visionary, integrator, and then you'd have the head of marketing, head of product, or head of marketing, head of operations, and then people under them. You kind of get to a point where you, as the founder, are like 3 or 4 steps removed from the people actually doing the work. That's necessary if you're building like an 8+ figure company where you need to have full C-suite and all of that. But I think for our kind of niche creative businesses, the challenge has always been that as soon as you as the founder let go of marketing, it's a ticking clock then, because the quality just degrades fast, right? When you have copywriters writing stuff for you, like, your personality starts to be etched out of the business. And that's a big problem because your audience notices that. And your emails become less interesting to read, so people stop reading them in the inbox. And so what I think that AI is permitting is it's permitting the founder to stay inside the business and directing things with their creative input, but with a lot less work to do personally. And crucially, the people who are actually doing the work and implementing things are they are there with you, right? This is not someone under someone else under someone else. This is you sitting down, talking directly to the person who's gonna actually do that thing. And so you're kind of creating what I've been thinking about as a circular org chart, where rather than having people underneath you, it's more of a collaborative studio type environment where you're eliminating the distance and the gap between individuals. And that, I think, with the help of AI, actually makes for more creative work than was possible before. Because, when you look at these operations with historically big teams, 15, 20 plus people, it's very organized and systematic, but it's very, very expensive. And the quality just really, really goes down.
Yeah, hearing you talk about these things really, I'm really thinking about it and thinking by myself, wow, a lot of things changed over the past 2 years. Like during the first 10 years of building, blogging and selling online courses.
Yeah, almost nothing changed.
Not much happened, right? But now look at all these things that we are talking about. So the big question, and this is obviously a very hot topic on the internet. People are talking about it on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and the statement is, course businesses are dead. What is your take on it?
So I think a few things are probably true. I think that the willingness to pay $300 or $400 for an online course is going to drop over time because it's no longer going to be seen as premium, right? The fact that a creator has sat down and spent 100 hours recording videos that they're publishing to the internet, it's just I think it's starting to get old. And so that's what I think is going to happen. You're already seeing obviously a lot of people, especially younger and more tech orientated people, moving towards AI and just using AI for everything. But that's still not most people. A lot of people in the language space sell to a slightly older demographic. These are people in their 60s, 70s. Not everyone by any stretch, but these are people who don't adopt new technology as quickly as other people. Like, so, my mum, for example, has used ChatGPT to learn Spanish, to ask it a few questions, but she's not going to go and build her own curriculum and use that as a substitute for a Spanish course, right? And that's not going to, I don't think that's really going to change. And so I think that courses have a place, and the more that is supported by a very, very strong brand and a very, very strong, unique mechanism, value proposition, the better. But I think inevitably over the next, who knows, 2 to 3 or 3 to 5 years, the willingness to spend good money on online courses is just going to drop. And it could happen slowly. I think, if you think back to when ChatGPT first came out, what's it, like 3 years ago? I think most people would say progress has been a bit slower than we expected. Everyone thought, okay, within 3 years, everything's going to be, online business is going to be dead. I think progress has been slower than expected. And then you have things like Claude Code and OpenClaw come along, and then everyone's like, wow, hang on, things just changed quickly. But still, I feel like the pace of change is slower than we all thought it were going to be. So I feel like, certainly for me at Story Learning, I am actively working on moving the business away from online courses. Not because I think we're not going to be able to sell them for the next few years, but it's just, because remember, people are still buying books, they're still buying PDFs, right? These things are still selling, but it's just going to get harder and harder. And so I think it's one of those times where, just like if you published a physical magazine in 1998, you're going to start to look at websites and digitized versions. It's not people still buy magazines still now, but you wouldn't be betting on it as the future, and you would be starting to diversify. So I think that's the name of the game now. I think the most important thing for people is to really make sure they are proactively learning about and experimenting with AI, and joining communities like the community at Creator Empires, where you get to be around other people who are in your space thinking about this exact thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a mastermind event coming up in Amsterdam. What is it, next week? In 2 weeks, from now. Yeah. I am sure we're going to spend almost all the time talking about AI, or at least half the time talking. Well, maybe not, but a significant amount of time talking about AI, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of the conversation will be focused around that. So if I was a newer language business, or even an older language business, I'd be thinking about how can I get in that room so that I don't have to figure this out for myself, and I can learn from the stuff that other people are out there learning right now, just to speed things up. Because the biggest danger, I think, is being left behind and waking up one morning and realizing your business model is obsolete.
And that's also what you do yourself, right? You're also in these mastermind groups where people talk about AI and course businesses, and all of that. But so my take on this then, so I think that the different reasons why people buy a course from Olly Richards, right? Number one is they don't know what else to buy. They want to buy a Spanish course. They've watched your videos. They want the materials. They want the course. And then there are other people who say, wait, I can also buy a book. or I can go to the internet, I can go to Google, I can download Spanish lessons for free. But the reason people buy from you is because they like your learning philosophy, they trust you, right? So there's trust, they like your style. So even with AI, that's still there, right? There's still a reason why people might buy your course rather than going to GPT. That
Yeah.
said, GPT can customize, it's more interactive. So I do definitely think that there's a...
But it's also completely unstructured, and I think from a learning perspective,
Yeah.
that really matters because structure really matters. But it's interesting to look at things like OpenClaw and Claude Code and think about the fact that, you know, we're moving towards a world where now anyone can build anything. And I do still think there's a world of difference between like just some guy in his bedroom who's knocking up a quick language app and an app like Teacher AI, where experts have spent years refining it to make it a good user experience. So it's not easy to replicate that, even if you have AI helping you with that. But still, we're moving to a place where software itself is less defensible because people can just make. There's going to be so many more apps, so much more software out there. So, like the big change with the internet was that the cost of distribution went to zero, right? So if you produced a magazine, you didn't have to ship it to another country anymore. You could just send it on the internet. So the cost of distribution goes to zero. The value of information essentially goes to zero. The thing that's happening with AI now is that the cost of production also goes to zero because you can just make unlimited amounts of stuff. So what happens in a world where you can distribute anything anywhere immediately? You can produce the thing that you're distributing anywhere. Like what is left? And the answer is audience and brand and distribution, right?
Trust.
Because
Yeah.
if the product changes, whether it's an app or an online course or whatever, if a product changes, then so everyone in the world, like there's a million products, a million people, we're all selling like what it doesn't help you to quickly code up a new app if you've got no one to sell it to, right? But me at Story Learning, if we quickly code up a new app, we've got an audience to sell it to. So the audience still becomes the asset. And this is why I think YouTube is such an important thing to stick with, because if you can do a good quality job of growing and maintaining and nurturing audience, then even if your product ends up changing, you've still got distribution. And so I think more and more it's about really understanding the value of audience. I mean, audience has always been key anyway, but it's going to become even more important. And I think also personal brand, frankly, audience, trust, reach. That's for now, at least, until the AI influencers take over. That's still the most defensible long-term position.
Yeah. So how can language course creators fight AI? Number one, by having a really good brand, build trust, have an audience, have the distribution, but then also be yourself, right? Be human, talk about your experiences. Like AI doesn't have experience. You can be funny, you have stories that AI can make up, but yeah, well, if they're your stories and they're your experience. What about like offering community? People want identity, right? They don't get that by talking to AI. They do get identity if they join a community with people in it. There's accountability, something that AI doesn't really offer. And then there is one-on-one hand-holding, basically, right? High ticket that you briefly mentioned earlier. Anything that I'm missing?
No, I think community and high ticket is right. Community is a tricky one because I also feel there's fatigue with online groups. Like I'm not I don't know if you feel this, but I certainly feel like I don't put me in another WhatsApp group. Like I haven't been on Facebook for years. Like, am I really going to log into Circle for a community? It's like, yeah, maybe. But like, I think, I don't know. I feel like online communities have had their day. In real life is absolutely the best, but good luck taking a global audience like we've got here and
Yeah.
bringing everyone together. It's very, very hard. It's one thing to do that with a business audience. So now when we bring all these language creators to Amsterdam in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks, like it's worth it for us because we can charge enough money to make it viable, right? But it's going to be difficult to do that if you're selling to Joe Blogs who's learning Spanish. Like they're not going to pay large amounts of money to come to a community event. Now, can you put on an in-person experience or like an immersion retreat? Yeah, you can, if that's what you really enjoy. Um, like anything that's in person that involves a lot of education is just inherently very difficult to do. And the more you go towards B2C, the more you have to actually take care of the experience and the environment and all of that
Yeah.
and the stuff that you provide. So, I mean, community, if you can do it, great. Like if you have a business that's very local, that would be cool. So for example, if you were teaching French to American expats in France, then absolutely have like community meetups in
Yeah.
Marseille, twice a year or something. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's just very difficult to do at scale. Um, Now, high ticket is, I think, in many ways the antidote to online courses because well, for a few reasons, right? Firstly, because like courses, what's the problem with courses? People don't complete them. So how do you and so they don't get the result. Now, if you want to get people the result, what do? Well, you have to actually help them complete it and do the work. The only way to do that is with coaching. So and the only way to do coaching is through high ticket. So there is a very good reason to move towards that. But also the thing with high ticket is it supports more of a kind of middle of funnel targeted content plan, right? So if you're able to have a YouTube channel which focuses less on views and more on specific avatars, and the product that you sell them is high ticket, well, then you need far fewer people to make good money than you do if you're selling online courses for $200 each, right? So if you're selling a coaching program for 2,000, then you need 10 times
Mm.
fewer people than the person who's selling the online course for 200. Okay, now
Yeah.
granted, you have margins to worry about and all of that, but still, I think you know in a world where information is just everywhere and personalized with AI, there's going to be less as a general view. There's going to be less and less motive to pay for that information, and so what people would pay for instead is the support and accountability to actually implement the information and get the results. So I think we could to generalize all of this. I think the move is towards more of an even more specific niche. I mean, niche has always been the game, right? But even more of a specific targeted niche than before. Content that speaks directly to that avatar with a unique personality, method, system of some kind, offering higher ticket programs to get people a specific result, and using community where possible to create that long term um, kind of brand connection. So I think that's generally the direction of travel.
Yeah, it's quite funny because many of the Langpreneurs in our community started out as a teacher, right? Like many years ago, before they did YouTube, they actually did a one-on-one, and then they found out about YouTube and that you can build an audience, sell courses, and then they
Yeah.
moved to selling online courses. And now they're thinking by themselves, okay, it's going well. I've sold tons of courses, but how can I find AI? How can I provide even more value to my most valuable leads or customers? And many of them are actually reconsidering selling one-on-one lessons, but then in the form of a high-ticket program. So it's kind of full circle.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. People wanted to get away from one-to-one teaching, and now we're kind of going back to it. I mean, the big difference here, though, is that if you get it right and you build a big enough audience, it's not you doing the teaching, but you can bring
Yeah,
in other people to actually do that. And this is where the unique mechanism becomes valuable, right? So, for example, at Story Learning, we teach languages through story. Um, for that reason, it doesn't have to be me doing the teaching, right? Anyone can come in and deliver our method through stories. So that's the way to play it. Like it shouldn't be you like if you offer you as the product, then people will gladly take it, but then you can't, it's very difficult to get yourself out of it again. So yeah.
Anything else that you are bullish on in the Langpreneur world when it comes to Langpreneur entrepreneurship? I'm just going to summarize in a recap for the audience. Not focusing on videos that get tons of views, but videos that actually attracts the right leads. Niche channels, like for example, your podcast channel. Using AI to optimize your own workflows, but also, make the team more productive, more output, lower your costs. Be more creative. We talked about accountability and community, selling high tickets. Anything else that we haven't mentioned that you were bullish on in 2026? And
I mean, we've published quite a lot of books, and I had a meeting with my publisher on Wednesday last week, or was it Thursday? Thursday last week. And, we had a record start to the year. We've just sold over 2 million books in total. The number of, as of yesterday, was 2,005,000 books. Books are selling as well as ever. And it's just interesting as a counterpoint to all the kind of AI stuff, right? Because, how do you explain that? Why is it that you've got ChatGPT everywhere and Claude this and Claude that and Open whatever and YouTube and TikTok, and yet people are buying more books than ever? I mean, for me, I think that shows that people are, in any kind of education space, you have a serious group of people who take their learning seriously, who want good quality products. And so I think that in any scenario, like there's no world in which trust and genuine value evaporates and disappears completely. And the more that happens, the more opportunity there is for the people who actually take pride in their stuff and do a good job. So, I think that, if you've got something to say, like, go and write a book. Write a book about it. Don't ignore some of the more traditional channels, because I think for long-term brand building, those things are very powerful. So I think like it is very important to be doing as much as you can with AI, but not at the expense of long-term brand building. So I throw that book thing there just as a as a more kind of like a counterbalance to the narrative.
Yeah, writing books, and that's also the way how you built your business brand. After building Story Learning for 13 years, Story Learning became a multi-million-dollar business. And at a certain stage, you were like, okay, what's next for me? And you wrote this book. What's the title?
It's called Anatomy of a $10 Million Online Education Business.
Yeah, where you gave away all the secrets of how story learning works behind the scenes. You now run a business channel where you talk about building online education businesses, and also a membership program. You do some one-on-one coaching, and you've worked with some of the biggest names in the online education space. What have you learned from running that membership program and that business brand about, let's say, entrepreneurs or creators in the education space who want to grow? Who want to build I think they are typically at 6 and they want to get to 7 figures, right? What have you learned from working with those people?
Man, where do I start? I mean, so much. I think like the journey in general for me has been, so, when I started my business brand, which is at ollyrichards.co, when I started that, I'd had some success with story learning, and obviously I had friends who had been successful in other spaces, but I hadn't directly built lots of different businesses in lots of different niches and models. So, I kind of got into that thinking to myself, like, okay, I've got some legitimate experience here. And, I remember when I was first getting started, I really wanted to learn from someone who had actually done the thing that I was trying to do. So I knew that my experience was valuable. But in the last few years, like, the big thing that's changed is that I've just worked with so many different entrepreneurs in different niches with different models, ranging from books to ads to TikTok to podcast. Like, it's just all over the shop. That I've just got a much more. I just see so many businesses and how they work that it's just it's very, very eye-opening to see across the industry and to see how different people are making money. And so I'm not even sure how to begin to describe like what I've learned, because it's just everything. I feel like my horizons have just massively expanded.
Yeah.
But
Are
I think
some?
one thing that's
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say to make the question more specific, like what is one thing, or what are three things that the typical member struggles with? Like what is a problem that you see over and over again, and what is the solution to that problem?
It's honestly like so much of it is just knowledge deficit. It's not knowing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would often have someone come to me who is already running a 7-figure business, but doesn't use email. I mean, it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And when I say use email, I mean, use it in the way that we
No
might
email
teach,
marketing.
proper email marketing. I mean, they might have a newsletter that they send like once a month or whatever, but whenever they open enrollments for their program, they don't send any, or they send like one email. So you've got people who are making 7 figures just with a YouTube channel or just with their network or just with LinkedIn, but they don't use email properly. And why not? It's because they just don't know. No one's ever told them.
Yeah.
Right? It's similar to, I was just speaking with someone new the other day who has a program. It's a live teaching program, who gets their traffic through SEO and paper, like print flyers that they send to schools, and it's been going great for them. They have they do book a call, so they have a sales call to enroll people in this product, but there's absolutely no system behind that. So when people join to book a call, there's no follow up, there's no email education, there's no reminders of the call, there's no script, there's just none of this stuff. So they're running this operation with absolutely no best practice in their primary conversion vehicle. So like straight away, the biggest opportunity is just, okay, well, how do we professionalize this? How do we just take what you're doing and just make it best practice? And I could go on and on with examples of this kind of stuff. So it's just really crazy how a gap in your knowledge and the things that you know, just how much it holds you back. And I think it just speaks to the importance of education and just surrounding yourself with people who know this stuff. But this is why, like, I think often, I think you know the kind of people I'm talking about here. People who are marketing first, often do a lot better than people who are pure education first, right? So someone who is a language teacher who decides to start a YouTube channel, they could have a business that's successful, but they're kind of going to resist the marketing. They're not going to enjoy the marketing because it just doesn't feel natural to them. So they'll do the bare minimum, but they won't go out and they won't learn it. They won't study it. That kind of person typically struggles, versus someone who decides one day, right, I'm going to learn to make money online, and they go and learn from, I don't know, Russell Brunson or something. They do Russell Brunson's, where they learn how to run ads, build landing pages. They learn the marketing mechanics first, and then they ask, how do I apply all this marketing knowledge to something that I know? Oh, I know some languages. Let's do this to teach French or something. Those people generally get a lot further faster simply because they start with the education piece. And so a lot of the job, I think, for people with an up and coming business is to say, there's a lot to learn out there, and the faster I learn it, the faster my business grows, and the faster my business grows, the more deep truths about my business I actually learn. Because the most important education is the education that you get from your own business, right? When I talk about things I did with story learning, I can talk about that with confidence because I actually did it, right? I learned the reality of my own business. So you've got to close the knowledge gap, learn things, apply it to your own business, get results. And then that's where you have real kind of embodied cognition, and you actually know it to be true because you've manifested it in your actual life. Right. And that's when you can then start to have confidence in your own judgment and make your own decisions without the help of anybody else. And that's when you really, I think, start to own a business rather than just something that makes money.
In case some of our listeners want to work with you, how does it work?
You can go to, you can search me on YouTube, or you can go to ollyrichards.co and have a search around. Down on my case study, you can read that, see if any of that stuff resonates, and usually that's the first step.
All right, I hope that you liked my interview with Olly. If you are a langpreneur, if you are building in the language space, and you were listening to this episode on time before March 19 and 20, 2026, then you might want to join our in-person mastermind event in Amsterdam. More information about that, just send me an email. I will put my email address, but also a link to our website in the description. Hope to see you there, and see you in the next episode.